Okay guys, welcome back to the Rex Pearson's beginner guitar course. I hope you've worked on those three chords, you've done a bit of practice before attempting this one, because this one's a big one. This is the changing from one chord to the next, and I'm going to give you as many tips, as many ideas that I can to make this process as easy as possible. Right. First thing, a couple of things I just want to talk to you about first before we zoom in and we look at some ways that we can improve this. Basically, don't worry about speed just yet. You're going to have to eventually be able to change from one chord to the next fairly quickly, but for now don't worry about speed. That comes with practice and with experience of just playing the chords and changing from one to the next. Speed comes with that. Don't make your goal to be playing fast. Make your goal to be playing accurately and slowly. Speed comes when you've got it accurately and slowly anyway, so don't worry about the speed. The next thing I just want to talk to you about is we're going to look at this thing called pivot points. What you will find is the three chords, and the way that I've taught them to you, are going to have one finger that stays on the same string and only slightly moves up or down. You might already know, if you know your chords really well, which finger that would be. And that is going to act as a pivot point, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute when we've zoomed in, and I'm going to give you as many tips as I can. Then we're going to do some exercises on changing from one chord to the next. The first chord change we're going to work on is from E major to A major. So let's zoom in on this fretboard and let's start the inevitable process of changing from one chord to the next. Alright, let's zoom in. Okay, so we are near the fretboard here, we're zoomed in. We're going to look at the changes, and I'm going to talk to you about three very key changes. We're going to look at three different chords which are in your chord dictionary now, and I'm going to give you some hints and tips on how to change from one chord to the next as easily as possible. Now, I've spoken to you already a little bit about how difficult this will be, and it's something that all beginner guitarists are going to have to go through. Try not to get too discouraged, because for some of you it might be very difficult to get your hands to coordinate. They'll feel like they want to flop around wherever they want to, but we'll train it, and with this idea of a pivot point, it will really help with these chords. Now, the first chord change we're going to look at is from E to A. So get ready on your E major chord, get fretting the E major chord just like I taught you before. So let's just strum that chord and make sure it's sounding good. If yours sounded like this, make sure you check out the part on E major to make sure that you are doing it absolutely correctly. Now we're going to have to change from E major to the next chord, A major. Let's just get ready on the A major. Start lining up your A major chord just as you would do normally, and then we'll deal with how to change from one to the next. A major chord was the first finger on here. This is the beginner version, remember. Second finger on the second fret, third finger on the third fret. If you don't know this, don't forget on rexpearson.com there's a whole guide to this on the A major chord. Let's just strum that and make sure it's sounding good. Again, if yours is sounding like something like that, you might be flattening off some of the fingers, you might not have fretted correctly down on the fret, or you might be too far back on some of the fingers there. So if in doubt, check the A major chord part again and recap over all the hints and tips. Now, the pivot point from E major to A major is this first finger. The first finger moves from here on the first fret, on the third string here, and it moves up one fret to the second fret. So on E major it's here on the first fret, and on A major it's here on the second fret. Now this is going to act as your anchor, your pivot point that you're going to work from for positioning the chords, because a lot of people, when they change from one chord to the next, they release their hand, then they line up one finger at a time like they've been doing. I don't want you to do that. That's a bad habit that you might get into. You want to look for the easiest possible way you can change from one to the next. And if there's a finger that's staying on the same string, use that as a pivot point. So the first one, from E major to A major, I want you to strum the E major chord. Then we're going to change to the A major chord, but you're going to release the two fingers. The first finger's going to stay on. You're going to release the pressure on it slightly, so it's not fretting, but just so it's gliding across the note. Slide it up to about halfway, because that's where it has to be for the other fingers to fit on. Then, with that in place, fret that note then bring in the other two fingers where they should be and play the chord. You're going to release the two fingers but keep this one in place, slide it up one fret, place the other two down. Then going back to E major, you release the two, bring the first finger back down to the first fret, place the other two fingers in the right place. Now you might not get clear chords at this stage, don't worry too much about that. As long as you can adjust to get a clear chord each time, that's what you're aiming for. Don't practice mistakes. Make sure that when you strum, if it's not sounding right, sounding like this, make sure you adjust each note till it's ringing out, then move on to the next change. Don't change until you get a perfect chord. That's a very important tip there. So again, from here, E major, change to A major, leave the first finger on, slide up, other two down. Now what I want you to do as an exercise, you put 60 seconds on your clock, on a timer, on a stopwatch. Time how many times you can change from E major to A major in 60 seconds. Now if you're around 16 to 20, that's a good place to be around about now with a beginner's course. What we're going to be aiming for, to play songs and things like that, you need to be able to do about a change every 2 seconds. So that means you've got to do about 30 changes in 60 seconds, which is sort of like... Now remember, that first finger is staying down the whole time, it's not moving, it's just releasing the pressure in between each chord. That's what I would like you guys to do. Okay, next chord change then is from A to D. So let's just recap the chords. A major to D major. Doesn't matter if you release at this stage to get ready on D major. Those two chords should sound something like that. Now the pivot point, it stays in the same place, and then the other two fingers fall down on the 3rd fret, 2nd fret. Second finger on the 2nd fret, 3rd finger on the 3rd fret. Now the big problem with this chord is always the 3rd finger muting underneath. Again, if you're having problems with this, check out the previous part. You should be following the course from start to finish to really get strong and to get rid of any bad habits. So if you've just joined at this part, go over to rexpearson.com and look at the beginner guitar course from the very beginning, and that'll train you up on all the chords. So the change then from A to D, first finger stays in the same place and the other two fingers move around it. And with this one you don't even need to release pressure on the first finger, but I would advise that you do, just to get used to releasing pressure and putting it back down. But it's staying on the string at all times, you're just releasing the pressure on the first finger. So you should be changing now from A to D, 60 seconds on the clock. Same exercise. How many times can you do it from A to D? Again, 16 to 20 is a good number for a beginner guitarist. You're going to be aiming for in your practice to go from A to D at least 30 times in 60 seconds. If you can do that, awesome. Alright, next chord change is from D to E major. So this is a much bigger leap because you're going from here, on the tops of the strings here, the thinner strings, and you're jumping all the way down to get onto this E major chord. So this is going to be slightly more difficult this time. Let's try and look at the pivot point and let's work through the chord just like before. We take the D major chord and we change to E major. Now at this point, just recap on the chord. So let go of the fretboard, line up on your E major chord and give it a strum. So the pivot point then is this first finger going from the 2nd fret to the 1st fret. So on the D chord we're on the 2nd fret here with this first finger, the other two line up at the correct frets. Nice strum on that. Then the first finger is going to slide down, the other two lift off, first finger slide down, then the other two line up on the correct frets for E major. Then going back to D, release the two fingers, slide the first finger up, put the two fingers back down. You should always release the two fingers before moving the first finger. Don't try and move the first finger and then release. Make sure that you do the two fingers, move it, then place the two fingers back on. So that change one more time, D major chord, release, slide down, E major chord. Now again, you want to be practicing your changes from D to E. 60 seconds on the clock, try that exercise from D to E. D to E. How many times can you change in 60 seconds? You want to be aiming for around 30 changes per minute eventually, but at this stage 16 to 20 changes in a minute is very, very good going. So final recap, we've got E to A, we've got A to D, and we've got D to E. Excellent stuff. Alright, next part I'm just going to give you a couple more tips on how you can best practice these sort of changes and make them a lot easier before we start tackling some songs. I don't want to get straight on into the songs until you've really got a good grip of all three of these chords, and then as soon as we start learning songs you guys are going to be ready to roll on them because you would have done all this practice beforehand, which is really good stuff. So don't forget the 60-second challenge on each of those changes. You've got 3 to practice there, and I shall see you in the next part where we're going to look at a couple of exercises that I use to practice on chord changes. See you in the